Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of our program. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we are privileged to have with us a special guest who is a motivational speaker and author on digital leadership and disruptive innovation, Erik Qualman. And I'll give a couple bullets here of his background. He is a #1 best-selling author. He was voted the second most likable author in the world behind Harry Potter's J.K. Rowling. Fast Company top 100 digital influencer, top 50 MBA professor, and he produced the world's most watched video about social media, and over 200 colleges and universities use his books and materials. So with that, welcome to the program, Erik.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here.
Hey, I'm sure we could have gone on and on and on, and I'm sure you kind of start rolling your eyes at all the accolades, and it's like, let's just chat about stuff and business. So let's just jump right into it. From your bio, what is a digital influencer? And then from that explanation, how can an entrepreneur begin to create digital influence to benefit their business?
Yeah, I think Forbes defines a digital influencer as someone that just has followers / that even if it's just 1 to millions, is when you do something, does someone react and do something based on your behavior? So that's what they view as an influencer. And by all means, for any entrepreneur, more and more you're starting to realize no matter what you do, that you kind of have to build out your personal brand because it's tied closely to your business. And so it is important for you to have influence over your customers, your partners, your employees. And so as an entrepreneur, you definitely need to go out and do that, have your own voice, and build your own personal brand, which more often than not is now tied to your business brand.
Yeah, you said something really interesting. We tie that definition into digital influencers. So all of those things, when you make a recommendation or make a statement, when people actually react to that, and I would even say in a positive or negative way, because sometimes even getting a negative reaction would be a good indication that you've kind of touched a nerve. Is there a difference? Do you feel that there's a difference in digital influence when you see some positive response as opposed to negative? Because you really can grow and learn from either one.
No, I think you're right, and it's the day and age we're living in right now with the election. If you look at Donald Trump, so why is he on the news all the time, or why is he always on digital outlets? Is because he causes a reaction, both positive and negative. So the media outlets, they understand that. They either call it eyeballs on TV or clickbait on digital outlets like a Mashable or a Huffington Post, is that they understand that that's what people, right or wrong, that's what they want to view. So they know that that's a polarizing person, and so that helps them on both sides of the equation, both positive and negative reactions. So it's causing something to happen.
Yeah, like the old saying, there's no bad publicity. Well, there really is, but it gets people talking about you, and it really does kind of bring things top of mind. And I also think that, from that human psychology point of view, when people hear a certain name or a certain thing over and over and over again, sometimes it is in the negative light, but your brain and your psychology remembers you heard that name. So that whole concept of influence, I think also needs to be made that you need to be a person worthy of attracting that influence. Like Seth Godin says about having a business worthy of being remarked about. You need to be remarkable. So what are your thoughts on how an entrepreneur needs to be very careful, because that is a power that you can wield in the sense of influence. And when you can have an influence over someone, like employees, let's say, or your target audience, that you have to come up against that very carefully and have that, ethical approach where you're influencing people for positive, for good, and even contributing back into their lives.
Yeah, with great gifts come great responsibility. So as you increase your influence, you do have to understand what kind of impact that you have on down the line. And you'll see that every day in the news that someone still hasn't grasped that basically privacy's dead. And that's why in some of my stuff I posit jokingly, like what happens in Vegas stays on YouTube or what happens on campus stays on YouTube, is that privacy is dead. And so it's important for us to understand that we can positively and also negatively impact the world by what we're posting digitally, and also what our offline behavior is, because our offline behavior is now captured in posted online. So that's what I mean by privacy being dead, is that we need to understand that every action we take is going to have a reaction, especially as we go up the ladder in terms of having more gifts, more influence, takes more responsibility.
Yeah, it really does. And your point about personal branding is really critical, because I think that too many people that are even entrepreneurs, they kind of get that, where it's like, yeah, branding, I get that. And, Coca-Cola and all the big brands, I see those big branding campaigns. But branding for the entrepreneur, the smaller business, and I think it's kind of comical that the SBA calls a small business 500 employees or less, because 200, 300, 400 employees, that's a pretty big business. But a small business should be taking this personal branding to the point that it really is not about massive media campaigns and colors of your logo. It really comes down to that personification of your own personality in the brand, the why you're in business, the Simon Sinek, find out why you're in business, and then create those moments where you can tell that story so that people resonate with that. So can you think of like one point where you would say, you know what, here's where a lot of entrepreneurs miss the boat when they begin thinking and planning about their building their personal brand?
I think they miss the point from the onset of it. They don't take the time to figure out exactly whether you do Simon Sinek why or what we call why, WHI, is we go why, like what's your mission? How do you differ from the competition? And if you went away tomorrow, what's that loss to society? And that gets kind of Simon Sinek's why, that I. So you've got WHI. What's your mission? How do I differ from the competition? If I went away tomorrow, what's the loss to society? Now, that seems easy, but when I work with large corporations and small businesses, when I get in there and I ask a small sample size, those three questions, if the people are on the same page, then there's no chance for external folks to take your brand where you want it to go. And remember, it's the external people that are going to take your brand where you want it to go. And so you need to make sure that you're on the same page internally, even if you're a small company, to figure out what is that WHI, those three questions, and really map out what do you want to stand for. Or another easier way to do it is to write down in basically 1 to 2 sentences. If someone were to Google you or Google your company, what would you prefer to show up in 1 to 2 sentences? And really writing that down, it's really hard to do. It takes a while to figure that out, but you've got to have that at your core. And so that's the biggest mistake that I think a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs make, is they don't take the time from the onset to really figure out what is it that they stand for and how do they differ.
Yeah, that really is a strong foundation, and I teach marketing strategy at different universities, and I know you do as well. And one of the academic terms that we teach is IMC, Integrated Marketing Communications, which is having a consistent and congruent messaging about your brand spread out across multiple platforms. So it cannot be all over the place. And you mentioned about having, different employees or different people telling your story, and even customers. Well, you remember that old game telephone where you tell one person one thing in their ear and then it gets down the line, and by the time it gets at the other end, you're laughing your head off, because how did it go from what it was, the truth, to this end result? And in a business, boy, if you don't have that story down, that vision, that personal brand for your business, then that telephone kind of concept starts kicking in, and now other people are telling your story, and then it's out of control. So I think that, boy, having that foundation in place and having your core employees and having it on your website and your social media so that it's just repetitive, just over and over and over again, that sure does help the people out there when they begin talking about you. You'll probably find some of your prospects or your customers mentioning you in social media using some of the buzzwords that you've created in that kind of personal brand.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, that's the important key, is that the only way you're going to scale is by making people external to the organization, partners, and also your employees are all media beacons as well, is to really get that scale. You need them to kind of embrace it and then to take it, and hopefully they take it in the way that you want it to. And the best way to ensure that is to ensure that you're on the same page and make it as simple as possible.
Yeah, exactly. And then also even looking up and down your supply chain. Look, how about your vendors? Because your vendors are going to talk. How about setting up listening posts? Setting up even the simple Google alerts or the Hootsuites or the TweetDecks where you're able to listen to what people are saying about your brand and just making sure that you interject yourself in the conversation, or your team does, to make sure that story is out there consistent. Hey, so you mentioned one of your books, What Happens in Vegas Stays on YouTube, and then the student educational version, What Happens on Campus. Give us a quick synopsis of what the teaching behind that is, and then let's move into what started that kind of cascading of over 200 schools and universities using your book in their curriculum.
Yeah, I mean, there's a massive seismic shift. So we wrote Socialnomics and then wrote Digital Leader. I felt that there needed to go deeper. Once I started, I was watching the news every day and seeing someone made a mistake that didn't realize that there's a seismic sociological shift, that society has changed. There's no more privacy. Whether we like that or not, it's just a massive shift in how we have to function. And so that's why we wrote What Happens in Vegas Stays on YouTube. And the impetus behind that is produce your best, then protect it. It's not just don't do this, don't do that. These tools are very powerful in a positive way, and that's the main emphasis of that book. And that's why it started to get picked up by over 200 universities. Then they reached out to us and said, hey, can you tailor this a little bit so it's more student-focused? So that's when we came out with the What Happens on Campus Stays on YouTube version. And it's been fun. It's been great. Really mission-based. Really get to the students. Again, they're not going to listen to you if you come in and wagging your finger. You got to come in and say, this is how you produce your best, and this is how you protect it online. And so that's why all of our partner universities have renewed. We did a pilot, and they've all renewed. So if you look at Rutgers University, they give out a copy to every freshman. So that's 7,200 students get a copy of this every year. And we know it's been successful because every university that we've partnered with has renewed this year. So it's been great to watch. I love it because it allows me to Skype into campuses, be on campus, and just really have an impact with the leaders of tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a really powerful platform, because when you think about the segments of demographics moving, the baby boomers and the millennials, these are the millennials that are the next up to bat kind of a deal with running and contributing to society. And you mentioned about wagging your finger. With millennials, they have grown up. They've grown up with. It's almost like, here's a new app and they can just run it. My 11-year-old, 12-year-old son can just run things technology-wise that, how did you learn that? Where did that come from? I think it comes just ingrained in that age group. So what would you say is a big aha when you are presenting some of these concepts to students on campus, and you're keeping in mind we're not wagging the finger, but we want you to be aware of this so that it pulls you to make sure that you're keeping things, kind of in privacy constraints. So what is your main focus when you're trying to communicate the message without wagging the finger at this really powerful demographic of millennials?
Yeah, I think it gets back to what we talked about a little bit in terms of small businesses. That's why I was trying to keep it simple, is to mention them, hey, you're starting to build your personal brand right now in college, and so do the exercise of writing down 1 or 2 sentences. What do you want to show up on Google? And then also what really hits home for them is they're really starting to get on LinkedIn. 3 years ago, I'd ask if they're on LinkedIn. Only about 10% raised their hand. Now almost 100% of college students are on LinkedIn. And I really stress to them the point, you need the network before you need the network. Meaning, like right now, it's much easier for you as a college student to network than it will be the moment you walk across that stage. Because it's so much easier to reach out to someone on LinkedIn that went to your alma mater and say, hey, I really love watching your success so far. Can I grab coffee with you for 10 minutes and just ask you and pick your brain, how did you become so successful after you graduated from my university? And so it's so much easier to have those meetings than the moment you walk across the stage. So I implore them to start to utilize their base as a student right now to start to network before they actually need the network.
Yeah, that's a huge concept, and it reminds me of Harvey Mackay's old book, Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty, and it's that mindset shift. And I think that if students can have that mentality of things do matter right now, and I know that you are famous for saying this, and when you and I did an interview a few years back, this is just stuck in my head from then, you can't boil the ocean. So I think that you probably do tell the students this, some of these concepts could be very overwhelming and could, you can't keep your finger on the pulse of every single thing, but hey, you can't do it all at once. Start with baby steps. And I think that begin with your why and those, how would people see you or you want them to see you on Google if they're Googling you? Are you finding some of these students that are, obviously the Pareto's principle, 80-20 rule is going to kick in where you get a group where 20% are going to just rock and roll with it. This number the next 20% segment are going to do okay with it. What are you finding over the most recent years of engagement with these concepts where social media has just taken off so much?
I think you're spot on that if you look at it, it's not everyone's going to embrace these tools right away. They're all on them, but some are able to embrace them and leverage them and actually build out companies while they're in college. And then others they just don't grasp it or dig into it as much as some of the others. So I'd say the major shift that I've seen is just, like I mentioned earlier, some of the tools shift over time on what the college students use. And so if you go from MySpace to Facebook, they're still on Facebook, even though the media likes to hype that they're not on Facebook. They're definitely still on Facebook. But the main ones right now are like Instagram's huge, but now that's getting overtaken by Snapchat. LinkedIn they're on, but they don't really, most of them don't dig into it that much right now. And so it's just fascinating to me to watch how quickly some of those shifts can happen. Or 4 or 5 years ago, I asked, aren't you concerned about your privacy? And no one raised their hand. Now that's their number one concern. So these shifts can happen rapidly. And so it's always nice for me to be able to Skype into so many college students to just get a pulse on what's happening and just to see that change happen very rapidly.
Yeah, I wonder, I saw a news article about a year and a half ago where it was talking about so many students were almost caught off guard when they go for their job interviews. And instead of checking your 3 references by calling up your people you put on the resume, they're going on your social media profiles and literally pinning your ears back going, look at this, I saw you do this, I saw you do this, and it is becoming a relevant factor in making job descriptions or job hiring decisions. So have you seen that happening? And also, have you seen anything where maybe some students are using one platform for their fun party personality side, and then maybe they're going to create their whatever profile, LinkedIn or Facebook, where it's the more business-like so that my job employers can look at that one?
So I always implored to them that, look, privacy's dead. You can't have this separate platform that's not going to show up. It's eventually going to show up. So just be one person. Your life's going to be a lot easier. Just live the best life you can. You're not going to be perfect. That's okay. When you make a mistake, own up to it. And I say how to be Flawsome. Like, it's not through our perfections that people like us or that people like our company. It's through when we make a mistake, do we take the time to show enough that we care? Do we take the steps to make that happen? And so when talking about job interviews, I always tell them, look, it used to be tell me what you did, not show me what you did. So before you even when I hire people, before you're even in that seat, I've already vetted you out online. And so you either didn't get the job interview because I didn't see enough of you. So 84% of candidates that get hired is because of something that an employer found online. That was part of the process. That it's actually you need that positive influence online when the employers are looking at you. So it can hurt you to have something negative, but it can really hurt you if you don't have anything out there or anything positive out there that's showing that you know how to do some of this stuff. So 84%, part of it is what was found online about that person, whether it's an endorsement on LinkedIn, whether it's just you have a nice blog out there, that plays into the factor before you even get in the seat. Even before you get in the seat, too, the other side, which is overhyped, is 35% don't get that job interview because of something negative that was found online. So 84% eventually get the job because of something that was positive online. 35% don't ever get in the interview room because of something that's negative out there. So that's kind of what we see is that the stats don't lie. That's what I see firsthand when I'm interviewing people is I'm going to research you online. And again, I'm looking for both more of the positive stuff. Mm-hmm. And then if there is something negative that's a flag, then you're going to be weeded out. But also I'm trying to figure out, are you using these tools on a daily basis?
Yeah, like you said, stats don't lie, and you really, you can as a student hear that and go, well, I'm not doing anything online. Well, then that can work against you because people do want to see you visible and operate, and people know that this is now part of our ingrained in our psyche and society. So don't run away from it. Just recognize that privacy's dead. It just surprises me. My wife teaches school, and once in a while some student will make the comment like, what, you can see text forever and ever and email? Yes. I mean, why do people still think that? But don't shy away from participating in things online and social media. Just be super careful and always be kind of thinking of that little, eye on your shoulder of people watching over. What are people going to see? And yes, you could have some flaws, but turn them into opportunities. So thank you. I mean, we could have probably talked for hours on end on each and every one of these points. So thank you for your time. What is the best way for some people to learn more about any of your programs, your teachings, and even your books?
I'll try to make it easy for people to find me. So it's just my first initial last name, which sounds like a superhero. It sounds like Equal Man. And so I'm just equalman.com. I'm at Equalman on Twitter. Anywhere Equal Man with the email. So just Google Equal Man. You'll be able to find us pretty easily. And if we can help in any way, please let us.
Super. Well, Erik, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for all you do in the industry and your thought leadership. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been great.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.